what keeping the IT leaders today in India wake up at night. What are some of those challenges when you look at cost challenges
Now there's a new type of silos which is increasing in the case of AI.
in this whole journey of understanding how much of storage do I really need?
When your storage cannot feed data fast enough to your AI models. Storage problems often show up as compute problems.
And today what we're talking about in the world is data centers which consume power too much.
And teams think they need more GPUs, they need more compute. Companies tend to overspend on compute and underspend on storage. So if you remember these 3 points, I think you will be able to scale AI sustainably without blowing the budget.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Manish. Welcome to the TechCircle podcast, another episode. Today, we'll be talking about a very interesting topic, which is what keeping the IT leaders today in India wake up at night. The story of AI as it is growing, the cost in itself and the cost of infrastructure with it is also increasing drastically. To cover that story and to understand how leaders can deal with that particular criteria, we have two esteemed leaders with us, Mr. Vinod Nair from Dell Technologies and Ms. Shubashree Pradhan from TechData Advanced Solutions. Before we deep dive into the conversation, leaders, why don't we introduce you to our audience?
Thank you very much for inviting us here. My name is Vinod Nair. I'm responsible for the storage business through channel partners, wherein we focus on how do we take care of our customer storage needs and also the AI requirements of our customers. So that is what I do.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shubashree Pradhan. I manage the Dell business for TechData Advanced Solutions. In my role, I work closely with the partner ecosystem, helping them to leverage Dell's infrastructure solutions and accelerate their AI adoption journey. A big part of what I focus on is enabling the partners to transform, not just by selling technology, but by building capabilities that align with the future of AI-driven business.
Thank you so much for introducing both of you. Vinod, I'll come to you first, right? And I want to put a context to the story before I ask a question. And in the world of AI, the data is one of, we say data is oil, right, in today's world. And it is growing exponentially. Specifically in India, we contribute roughly around 20% of the global data. The data in last 18 months have actually been growing at 2x what it was earlier, and all thanks to AI. I want to understand from you and from your experience, right? What are some of those challenges when you look at cost challenges when somebody is looking to scale AI, and what are typically those pieces where industry leaders grapple to solve this problem?
Yeah. So in fact, there are multiple challenges in terms of the infrastructure cost. The first one is the GPU and the compute cost, and these GPU and the compute servers are expensive servers. So there's quite a lot of money which is spent when you get into inferencing, training, etc., for the AI requirements of an organization. The second part is a lot of organizations do have GPUs, but they don't use it. So utilization sometimes is less. Okay, that is the second part of the thing. The third is that some of the cloud services, when you move from test environment to production environment, the cost actually increases. So this is the first reason. This is the first point where you find that the infrastructure cost in terms of or AI actually increases. The second part is in terms of the second point is of the data gravity storage. So as you're aware, and as all of us are aware, that a lot of money, today we have the growth of unstructured data, which is there, which is increasing rapidly. And you need storage capacity and it keeps growing. So, there's no organization wherein you have storage where you don't need storage. Actually, you continuously need storage. And with the advent of sovereign AI, etc., So data gravity becomes very important. So you will find more and more organizations looking at keeping storage devices inside their own organizations. And therefore, they need large amount of storage because of the growth of the unstructured data. That is the second part. Third is in terms of the movement of data. So when you move between a data center and a public cloud, there's a good amount of money that you spend, right? That also increases the cost. However, the bigger point is about the data gravity. So if you want to stick to that, then you will spend a lot of money investing. The third and one of the most important factors is in terms of the silos. So when you get into the AI aspects of the business, you will find that there are silos for analytics, there are silos for data lakehouse, there are silos for for analytics, like I said earlier, and MLOps, etc. Therefore, these silos actually create individual storage islands, which have to be, which actually increases the cost. Got it? Similarly, what happens is in terms of the, data pipelines, you got multiple sources, you do, ELT, etc., to get the data in terms of cleaning up the data, etc., for these things. So that also increases the cost. So that is one of the big points, which I mentioned about silos. Actually, silos were there in the organizations. Now there's a new type of silos which is increasing in the case of AI. The another important factor is in terms of where do you place the workloads, inefficient placement of workloads, that is actually very, very important point. Again, there were times when we were talking about whether you place the workload on the cloud or you keep it in your data center. Similarly, you will find that with the AI workloads, you have to take a right decision in terms of placement of workloads. If that is done, then you will have the cost of the infrastructure also going down because you will manage it effectively. Then also the operational complexity, which is actually increasing. So today we've got a new addition to your setup, which is AI for infrastructure for inferencing, training, etc., that you may use in your setup. So all these are some of the factors, but one of the important factors is in terms of governance, security. This is also a piece which is in fact one of the most important areas wherein a lot of investments are going to happen, and also the infrastructure required, will have to be taken care of. Hence, the cost of the infrastructure increases. So these are some of the reasons why you will find that the cost of infrastructure.
Very sharp observations you have put across, Vinod, that you have been interacting with customers, you've been on field, right? In your experience, from your experience, what has been some of those pitfalls which typically the enterprises come across in this whole journey of understanding how much of storage do I really need to have or to run an effective AI algorithm for training purpose or for say ABC say regions? So your thoughts on that?
Something that most people don't realize is AI is not just about powerful GPUs. Everyone talks about compute, like this massive GPU clusters from companies like NVIDIA. But storage is often the hidden bottleneck. Think of it this way. You can buy the fastest race car in the world. If the fuel line is clogged, it doesn't matter. True. And that's what happens when your storage cannot feed data fast enough to your AI models. Your GPUs just sit there waiting. In distributed training, it gets worse because you've got multiple machines all pulling data at once. If the storage isn't designed for high performance training, it hits bottlenecks fast. Right. Another very interesting thing to see is companies tend to overspend on compute and underspend on storage. They invest heavily on GPUs, but rely on basic object storage that wasn't designed for high performance training. So the result is obvious.
So if I want to just ask sorry to interject, and I want to ask a follow-up question there. Why the leaders don't, or why enterprises don't think storage should be the one, it should be equally balanced with compute as a spend, from a spend perspective?
Actually, the irony, storage problems often show up as compute problems. And teams think they need more GPUs, they need more compute. But what they really need is better I/O throughput.
Right. Understood. So we talked about a very interesting piece on the challenges, right? From a business perspective, from the tech perspective, which you have beautifully put across by that beautiful example. I want to come to you, Vinod, and understand from you. There are solutions which are in the industry, right? And how are some of those solutions paving their way? Uh, are they really helping bringing down the cost, or how far are they in terms of helping the enterprises?
Dell Technologies as a company, we have an array of storage products, which primarily help organizations, depending upon the type of data they have, they can actually pick up the storage buy the storage from us. So talking about a particular product called PowerStore, right? And that is the flagship product for us. And that particular product talks about helping the customers to save, especially when we're talking about AI and when we are talking about saving money, to save the cost. Okay, so the product line is called PowerStore, right? And it's got certain features and benefits which help the customers. For example, we call it deduplication ratio. Okay, that's basically 5:1, which means that if you have 1 TB of physical drives, okay, you can actually store 5 TB of data into that. Okay, so when you store more data into the drives, you need lesser number of drives. When you need lesser number of drives, you consume lesser power, you consume lesser cooling, lesser space in your data center, right? And today, what we're talking about in the world is data centers which consume power, too much power, right? So all these things actually help an organization to save money, space, etc. Right? So PowerStore helps you to basically store more in lesser cost. So that is something which is there, right? That is the first part of the story. So sometimes people get an impression that when you do dedupe or compression, you may be using processors, for doing that. Actually doesn't happen that way, because what we have done is we have implemented something called quick assist technology in the product. And therefore, what dedupe happens, it actually happens, it doesn't use the CPU cycles, right? Therefore, what happens is that, you don't have to worry about the strain on the box, on the device, so that doesn't happen. So PowerStore is the product, okay, which is something which organizations look forward to using today for their primary storage needs.
Perfect. And let me switch this perspective and bring in Pradhan, Ms. Pradhan here, and understand from her. Uh, your organization is more of a what you call distributor come partner, right? Uh, can you help us explain and elaborate a little bit on what Vinod was talking about, the pure storage and its features, by citing some good examples or some critical examples from your experience you would have seen this particular solution has tried to solve?
We basically deal with the partners. But I'll narrate a story through the lens of my partners. I have understood a few customers' pain points, what they go through, and how they have transformed their infrastructure and balanced their compute and storage needs. So this customer is also into genomics. As you know, in genomics, they deal with massive data sets every single day. Sequencing files are huge. Analytics pipelines are complex. And when you start layering AI and ML on the top of that, variant classification models, predictive analytics, the demand just multiplies. Okay. At some point, whenever the performance slowed down, the instinct was very obvious. Do they need more compute? Do they need more nodes, more code, or more GPU? But when they dug deep, they understood their CPUs weren't maxed out. The CPUs were just waiting on data. And that was the turning point. That's when they realized their infrastructure wasn't unbalanced because they lacked processing power. Their infrastructure was unbalanced because their storage layer wasn't keeping up with how parallel and data hungry their workloads had become. Okay? So that's where Dell PowerStore came into picture. Once they strengthened their storage layer with Dell PowerStore, everything changed. They saw more consistent performance, more flexibility, more agility, and even more speed. So to summarize, they didn't scale by adding more compute. They scaled by creating balance that allowed them to support high performance without over provisioning. So the key benefits of Dell PowerStore is Dell PowerStore gave them the freedom to run mixed workloads. One is that. Second is Dell PowerStore is cost efficient as it reduces capital expenditure plus the operational complexity. There is an agility factor too. Dell PowerStore helped them to achieve high performance without having them to redesign their entire architecture.
Right. So it beautifully fits into the problem statement. Like you said, it doesn't cost you that much, but it solves eventually the problem of infusing data to the systems which are requiring or which are data hungry. Uh, on that similar note, Vinod, we talked about not increasing the cost, but when somebody is putting in this solution, it would come with a cost. Eventually, it will be a saving as well, like Ms. Pradhan mentioned. Would you want to highlight some relevant, say, numbers or some stories where you have seen the success from a saving perspective?
Yeah. Yeah. So what basically happens is that the moment you talk about data reduction, which I mentioned, about 5:1, right? Savings are very clearly visible in terms of, like I said earlier, in terms of lesser drives needed to store more data that you have. That's one. So what happens is that along with that, when you look at compute also, wherein we talk about certain products of us, which offer 7:1 consolidation, especially our servers, etc. When you combine both of them together, you look at the overall TCO, right? Actually, it goes down because of both the components at play.
Any figure you want to put?
Yeah. So in the case of, let's say, even if you look at, let's say, the PowerStore, for example, the moment you do 5:1, you should be able to have around 68% of the savings in terms of the cost because of 5:1, data reduction ratio that we are talking about. So that is one of the things which actually helps in reducing the cost down, and which helps primarily in improving your TCO. That's something which helps. That's what it is.
Today, we are looking at 68% of cost reduction, right? How much was it, say, about 5, 6, 7 years back? And what was this? What were some of those challenges at that particular instance?
Yeah. So if you see earlier, like you mentioned, the it's all about the technology changes which have happened in, like, right. For example, today in the case of PowerStore, it's a complete NVMe-based solution that we offer to the customer. So in the earlier times, it was slightly different in terms of technology, right? So today we're talking about all flash NVMe drives, which gives you better throughput, etc., right? So technology has changed over a period of time, okay, which has basically helped in improving your, total cost of ownership, right? And also the compression technology or the dedupe technology, which has changed, right? Therefore, from the earlier number of, let's say, 2:1, 3:1, today we're talking about 5:1. So as a company, as a product, the evolution has happened, and that is where we are today in terms of the product. And as a company, we also offer a guarantee. Let's say, for example, we tell you that we are offering 5:1, DRR ratio, so data reduction ratio. What we say is that if we are not able to match it, we'll give you additional hard drives free. Okay, so there is a guarantee which, as a company, we offer. Okay, because all depends on the type of workload actually you put on the storage device. So that actually plays a role there. So sometimes you may say that, mine is not. So we as a company, we give you a guarantee on that. And that's where it stands.
We've come a way across over the 5 years, 10 years, tenure to achieve that efficiency mark in terms of cost reduction, right? So, but when you look at the cost, when you look at the solution, they are absolutely present. But I want to come to you, Ms. Pradhan, and understand from you, and then probably Vinod, your thoughts on that as well. But how beautifully does this solution or this type of solution get integrated within the AI stack? Is it possible? Is it happening? Uh, if it is happening, could you help us with, say, one or two examples there? And what are one or two those critical matrices which the IT as well as business leaders are actually looking at measuring the ROI when they are infusing such a solution into the AI stack?
See, I often refer to Dell PowerStore as the hero product of Dell. So one of the key features of Dell PowerStore is it fits into the AI tools that the companies are already using, whether that's virtual machines, containers, or frameworks. It doesn't require you to redesign your entire stack. It strengthens the storage layer underneath it. What that really means is your AI models get data faster and more consistently. And when your storage keeps up, your GPUs and CPUs aren't sitting idle. They are fully utilized.
They are not hungry, so you are continuously feeding them with the data. Right.
So your GPUs, when they're not sitting idle, they're fully utilized, models train quicker.
Okay.
Teams can test ideas faster. So you don't have to buy more compute to fix a performance issue.
Correct.
So to measure ROI, I think IT leaders should not look at the storage capacity. What they must look at is few simple things like, are our GPUs fully utilized? Are the training times going down? Are we spending less per model run? Are we getting insights into production faster? If the answer to all of these questions is yes, without adding more compute, then that's the real impact. That's the real return on investment.
Are the leaders really looking at these?
Absolutely, because the base point still remains that the storage is growing, and when you talk about everything begins with data, right? Isn't it? So whether you want to train, whether you're doing inferencing, at the end of the day, even in the case of when you do all that, there's a new data which, especially in the case of Gen AI, a new data gets generated and it gets into a storage after going through a model, isn't it? And there's an inferencing which is done, and the data, the output which comes in, it has to go to a device. Therefore, action around storage is actually increasing, in terms of the whatever point she mentioned. That's one of the most critical. That is something which is the critical aspect, because you need a place where to store your data, which you will consume always.
But before I leave both of you, one final question, which probably everybody asks, and me being a moderator, I would also like to take that privilege, right? Your thoughts on, or your views, or what I would say, what do you want to tell to the future leaders who will be coming into the industry and they will be looking to scale AI, right? Uh, your your inputs to them today will be very critical for them to understand and listen. Uh, I can start with you, Ms. Pradhan, and then I can come down to Vinod.
Looking ahead, the advice I would like to give to the IT decision makers is don't scale AI by adding more compute. Scale by creating balance. Balance that allows you to support high performance without over provisioning. So, in industries like banking or financial services, where data is massive and highly regulated, and so is the case with manufacturing, where you deal with data heavy sets every single day. So scaling AI sustainably comes to three things: move, measure, monetize. First is move. Make sure your data moves faster. If your data moves slow, more GPUs won't help you. Second is measure. Check your current system is fully utilized before you plan to buy more. Third is monetize. Focus on AI projects that clearly helps you save money and drive revenue before you scale. So if you remember these 3 points, I think you'll be able to scale AI sustainably without blowing the budget.
Perfect. So those are three M's for our future leaders. Your threes or twos, do we have any?
I mean, basic, suggestion. I mean, we have a lot of leaders who know exactly what needs to be done. But yeah, I mean, we would just like to say that, you start small with a small slice of your AI project with a specific use case, attach it to your P&L. That's something which you could start out with. If I'm sure a lot of people are already doing it, but still, giving a suggestion on that. And then look at, the project as self-funding. for your AI. If you can do that, that's fantastic. Last but not the least, it's all about CapEx versus OpEx, which actually happens in an organization, what needs to be done in the terms of AI also. And the other thing, which is, of course, when today, if you see the use cases which are there in an organization, when you start with one use case, you will see that the number of use cases actually keep increasing. You may start off with one, but it keeps increasing. And also, if you have a use case, it can be reused, which is what anyways the organizations will do, especially the data, when you clean up the data and put in certain features, etc., and pick up those features and use it in another model. So, so all that will happen. So that is something which needs to be done. And of course, if you treat, data as a, as the reference point of starting, which is, of course, because you need to do a lot of work on that before actually you start using it. So these are some of the things which I think, I think a lot of people are familiar with, and that's the way one could look at it, actually.
Perfect. Brilliant. Thank you so much, leaders. That was a very insightful conversation, I must say. But to put it into a nutshell for our viewers, I would say that in today's time, when you look at AI at scale and you look at bringing the cost down from an infra standpoint, the design piece makes a real important factor. And I would like to use those three words which Ms. Pradhan mentioned about three M's, right? Those will definitely make the decision much faster and with a better outcome. With that, that's a wrap from my side. I'm Manish Yadav, Head of Research at TechCircle. Till then, see you next time. Bye-bye.